Hi, and welcome to Uncle Scott's Kitchen. Today we've got a big, in-depth review and cooking feature based on this guy. This is a Staub, French-made, enameled cast iron 7-quart Dutch oven. Been cooking in this thing for about 5 months now. This has been my go-to Dutch oven. I really like it so far. What we're going to do in today's video is run through its stats and features. We're going to really drill down on the black matte interior that Staubs are kind of famous for. See if that interferes with whether we can see our food or not. And then we're going to do a bunch of cooking, show you what this thing can do. Let's get started. Okay, let's talk about first impressions. The Staub, it comes in a nice box. I really do like a nice box. When you pay up for a real deal piece of French cookware, you kind of expect a nice presentation. When you open the box, you see the underside of the Dutch oven's lid. The first things you see are the words "Made in France." They are really proud of the fact that this is made in France. It's on the box in several places. And then when you turn the lid over, you see this, a nice ribbon in the colors of the French flag. I really do like it. Pull this thing out and set it up, and right off the bat, this thing is a beautiful piece of cookware. Makes a great first impression, like me on the first date with my wife. Really darn good looking. Next thing you notice about this thing is that it is heavy. This is solid, real deal cookware. Now this 7-quart model is a pretty big one to begin with. And the bottom part here weighs in at over 10 pounds, just the bottom part itself. The lid is over 5 pounds. Put them together and you are between 15 and 16 pounds empty. So this thing is built like a tank. It is heavy, it is sturdy, and I really like that in a piece of cookware. Makes it feel very well made. Now the bottom is all cast, so the handles are integrated with the metal. There are no rivets or anything like that inside. The lid, however, has a removable knob. The knob is real metal and it is oven safe up to at least 500 degrees. Now with Staubs, the lids have a little bit of character. There is kind of a lip around the lid here, and it kind of reminds me of my camp Dutch oven. And I guess back in the day when people used these to cook on hearths or whatever, you could actually put coals on top of these and get that kind of oven effect when the lid is on the pot. Now on the underside, Staubs have these little dimples, and as moisture evaporates when you're cooking, supposedly it will condense on the underside of the lid here, and those dimples will help that kind of drop down and rain down on food to keep it basted. Okay, now let's take a look at the black matte interior. One of the characteristics Staubs are known for, that dark interior. Confused me a little bit at first, especially when I was looking at these online. Let's see if we can clear a little bit of that up. Now the whole thing is made out of cast iron, enameled cast iron. I never knew if the interior was bare cast iron, kind of like a Lodge cast iron skillet. Did I need to season it? Could I use acidic ingredients in it? It is not. It is enameled just like the rest of the Dutch oven. So there are no worries about seasoning, moisture, acidic ingredients. It looks like bare cast iron, but it is actually enameled, so no worries there. Now the next thing you often hear about these dark interiors is that compared to Dutch ovens with lighter interiors, it can be a little bit difficult to see your food, especially if you're developing a fond. So let's see if we can drill down on that just a little bit more. I put up a poll here at Uncle Scott's Kitchen and asked you guys, if you've used Staub enameled cast iron cookware, do you think it is difficult to see your food or your fond in the matte black interior? Now this is not a scientific poll, but polling people that watch Uncle Scott's Kitchen's videos, I think we are pretty savvy when it comes to cookware, so I do take these results to heart. About 60% of respondents have not used a stove, and I think there's two reasons for that. One, these things are expensive. They don't give these things away. There's a little bit of a barrier to entry with the high price. And second, maybe that some people are confused by this dark black matte interior. Of the 40% of people who responded who have used Staub cookware, about 2/3 say the black matte is no problem, and about 1/3 say they would rather have a lighter interior. So it does bother some people. I've been cooking in this 5 months. It hasn't bothered me. So let's go ahead and jump into some of the cooking tests and check out that black matte interior, see if we can see down in there. I'm going to start with some Ribollita, a good healthy Italian vegetable soup. I often make a big pot of this on Sundays. We serve it along with Sunday dinner. And then with a 7-quart Dutch oven like this, there's enough left over that I can have soup for lunch 4 or 5 days that next coming week. So I make a lot of these Italian soups. And I often start out with a sofrito. Sometimes I just dump it in, sometimes I soften it. Here I've got some olive oil heating up, and I'm adding my sofrito. I'm going to soften it. I don't want any browning here. I just want these veggies kind of softened up, get a little softer and sweeter, kind of like me. And just eyeballing it here, just on my home stovetop. No extra lighting here. I can see down in there very well. To that, I'm going to add some stock. I'm going to add some potatoes. Now I'm adding some cannellini beans. I started from dried beans and soaked those and cooked those separately, so these are already cooked when I'm adding them here. Going to add some cabbage. Now the real recipe calls for Savoy cabbage. With the supply chain issues of the day, my local supermarket has stopped carrying Savoy cabbage. So I'm just using green. And then some lacinato black kale. Don't be afraid of the kale. It's delicious and good for you. And then a little bit later, I'm adding some tomatoes. You don't want to add your tomatoes at first, especially if your beans aren't completely cooked, because sometimes that acid can kind of stop beans from cooking. So add your tomatoes closer to the end, boil that for a while, and serve with some homemade bread. Absolutely fantastic and delicious. And I think this stove performs very well making big batches of soup. Next up, let's make some weeknight chili. I want to show how this thing browns some ground beef. Now normally I prefer a square meal. This one is a little more rectangular. Got that down in there, start the browning, and get it all broken up. I can drag the wooden spoon through there and nothing is sticking. Later on, after I've gotten some nice browning, there are some sticky bits on the bottom. And here again, I can see down in there and I can see those sticky bits fairly well. It doesn't bother me, that black matte interior. Adding in some onions, deglazing everything with a little bit of beef stock. Now adding some beans and tomatoes and a bunch of different spices. Boil that for a while, and the stove made a fantastic pot of weeknight chili. Now, Dutch ovens are known for being versatile. They do work well for soups and chilies, but you can also do a lot more with them. Here, making a couple of different loaves of homemade bread. Sorry for the camera shake. I would fire the cameraman, but unfortunately, he's me. So I preheat the stove Dutch oven with the lid on in the oven at 450 for at least a half an hour or so. One thing you notice here is that this is the cherry red color model. After it's been in the oven, as it heats up, it darkens, it changes color. Later on, when the Dutch oven cools back down, it will return to its original color. Pretty amazing to see. In goes my dough, get the top cut nicely. On goes the lid back into the oven. I bake this about 40 minutes covered, then I remove the lid and another 10 minutes or so to get that top a little bit darker and crunchier. And I thought it turned out really nicely. Now you might notice that the loaf looks a little bit small in there. That's because this is a very big Dutch oven. Hello. Come here, you want to say hi? This is my assistant. Can you say hi?
Hi.
Okay, good play, please. Bye-bye. Technically, you'd probably want a 5-quart or so if you were just going to be doing the baking. I'm going to talk to my wife about maybe getting one of those. But if you're in the jack of all trades, need one pot to do a lot of things, then it's okay for those loaves to be a little bit lonely down in a big Dutch oven. Turned out really well, nice crust on there, and I typically make a loaf like this to eat along with my soup throughout the week. Now let's do some deep frying and fry some chicken. Actually, you know what's better than frying chicken? Double frying chicken. Going to do that for Asian night around here. Going to show how you can deep fry in the stove. So we're going to make some sweet and sour chicken here. I have my Lodge cast iron wok heating up on another burner. We're going to make the veggies in it. We're going to double deep fry the chicken in the stove. Got that peanut oil up to temperature. And previously we have hand cut some chicken, marinated it, and dipped it in a batter. And this is going to turn out fantastically, by the way. Using a recipe I saw on a site called Walks of Life. I'll put a link to it below. Fantastic Asian food recipes if you get a chance to check them out. So I've got the oil up to temp, and I'm going to work in batches here because I have a lot of chicken to cook. I'm going to carefully lower in my pieces of chicken. They're frying up very nicely. I'm going to use my trusty Thermopin 1 to make sure they are up to temperature. For this first frying, I don't want to overcook. I just want to make sure the chicken is up to temperature internally. And when so, I am pulling these pieces of chicken out and letting them rest on a wire rack. In the meantime, nel frattempo, I get the veggies going over in the hot wok. Got some red and green peppers, some onions, got some pineapple, got a sauce. Get that all stir fried up. When that is looking good, I return the chicken to the oil in the stove. And what this second frying does is A, it reheats the chicken, gets it ready to go into the stir fry, and B, it adds a little texture and crunch to the exterior of that batter. So after 30 to 45 seconds of that second frying, I am transferring the double fried chicken to the wok. Make sure everything is combined really well. And I thought this turned out really fantastically. This was absolutely restaurant quality sweet and sour chicken. And for our final grand finale big time dish, I thought we might make a little peposo. Peposo, kind of an Italian beef stew, Tuscan peasant food. And just right at the top, I gotta say, if your lot in life is to be a peasant, I think Tuscan is definitely the way to go. And for this, I want to bring in a special guest star, a good friend of mine. You guys say hello to Chuck. Hello, Chuck. Chuck Brown Roast. If you've never made peposo before, typically you take a cut of beef that might be a little tougher, that takes a little bit longer to cook, like a chuck roast. I'm going to get to work on him in a minute with the big knife. We're going to cube that up, and then we are going to brown it, get it good and nicely seasoned, and then we're going to braise that meat for several hours. We're going to use the Dutch oven here, and what I thought might be nice is this might be a good way to test out the dimples in the lid of the Staub Dutch oven. Supposedly, when you slow cook, as we braise the meat, there's going to be a lot of moisture evaporates and collects on this lid, and these dimples are supposed to help that moisture drop down and keep the meat basted. So we're going to cook this in the oven, 325 degrees for several hours, in a lot of red wine, a lot of pepper, and see if those dimples actually keep our meat basted. Peposo is typified by using red wine as the braising liquid. We're going to be true to the dish's roots and use a nice Chianti Classico here. And also pepper, lots and lots of pepper, hence the name Peposo. Pepe is pepper in Italiano. Peposo, we're going to use some fresh ground pepper here. Got a 1/4 cup of peppercorns. I'm going to go to town on those with the old mortar and pestle here. Get those nicely cracked and ground up. So I'm going to get out the big knife here and go to work on old Chuck. Get him all cubed up. Then I'm going to salt and pepper those cubes really well using that pepper I just ground in the mortar and pestle. Then I've got my Staub Dutch oven on the stove top here. We're going to get it heating up. In goes some oil, and I am going to brown these beef cubes here. Get those nicely browned. Here you can see a little fond developing at the bottom of the pan. I don't have any trouble seeing this fond. Some people say it's tougher to see in the stoves, but I can see it pretty well. As the beef browns, I remove the cubes and make room for others. Now I'm going to add several cloves of coarsely chopped garlic. Don't want to brown those, but you do want them to heat up and release their oil just a little bit, adding some tomato paste. Now I'm going to deglaze everything with some of the Chianti red wine. I'm going to add a teaspoon each of dried rosemary and dried thyme. You can obviously use fresh. I just didn't have those today. Going to add a bay leaf or two. Going to add back the beef. Then I'm going to make sure I have enough of that red wine in there to get at least halfway up the sides of the beef cubes. And then I stick this in a 325-degree oven. Now this is going to take several hours to cook. After an hour, I'm going to take this out, remove the lid just to check it. I'm going to rotate my meat around. And it does seem like the meat is being well basted. And what I'm going to do towards the end, the last 20 to 30 minutes, I'm going to remove the Dutch oven from the oven, put it on the stove top, going to finish the cooking up there. And what you want to do here is add the rest of that Chianti and add the rest of that black pepper, and that will really give the dish a punch, a little bit of brightness and flavor right at the end. Now this is typically served over polenta, which I have here. It's also pretty darn good the next day as well. Holy cow, Tuscan beef stew, and the stove did an absolutely fantastic job. Now, I think you can probably tell I really like this Staub Dutch oven. It's been my workhorse here in my kitchen for about 5 months now. It's very versatile, everything from soup to chili to baking to braising, deep frying, going stovetop to oven. It's done a fantastic job and produced delicious food. That's the most important thing. So the Staub enameled cast iron, French made Dutch oven gets a thumbs up. Now don't forget to leave your questions, comments, and feedback below. If you've used the Staub, let me know what you think of Staub. Is that black matte interior a problem? If you decide to get one yourself, a very nice thing to do is use the affiliate shopping links. Look somewhere on this screen for links to other videos you might enjoy. Thank you for watching. See you again next time on Uncle Scott's Kitchen.